Good morning, and I have to say that it's a real pleasure and privilege to be able to join you here this morning, and I'm very pleased to say that we also have a lot of members of the Unilever Argentina team here as well. So let me start by framing what it is that we're going to talk about today. I want to talk about our context when it comes to food, and particularly to talk about what has become quite a cliche, but is nonetheless true, about the broken food system that we have. I then want to talk about what Unilever's response to that is. We talk about sustainable nutrition, and I'm going to try to unpack that and explain what we mean, what our commitments are, and how we're living it every day with our brands, and in the way that we're able to help consumers to be able to take action. And then I want to talk more broadly about what we call brands with purpose. And we very much believe that part of the new economy has got to be around brands with purpose. But let me first talk a little bit about Unilever. Many of you will know us as a business here, but actually we're a business that exists in 190 countries. We've got 2.5 billion consumers who touch our brands every day. And you can see here just some of the geographical spread that we have as a business. If you look specifically in the Americas, it's about a third of the group turnover of 17 billion that's here in this region. You may not know the name Unilever, but I suspect that you will almost certainly know the brands that are within the Unilever family. And we've put some of the biggest ones up here. And I put these up here really not to brag just about the fact that we have got these very important big brands within our house, but also to acknowledge that we know very well that with this comes responsibility. Responsibility to do our part to improve the world. And I'm going to say more about that later. But also acknowledging that because of the kind of reach that we have, because of the fact that every day more than 2 billion consumers are interacting with one of our brands, we truly can be a force for good. Because it's not only in the big steps forward that we take as far as sustainability that's concerned, but it's also about how small actions cumulatively can have a really big impact. And that's exactly what our brands are able to stimulate. Now, I said it before, the food system is broken, and probably we've all used that line a lot before. It has become a little bit of a cliche, but I think nonetheless it's worth us standing back and just reflecting on some of the big challenges that food faces. In fact, I would argue that food is central to the sustainability issues that we are going to have to deal with. So let's just think about this for a moment, that as we look towards a world with 9 billion people, then the amount of food that is going to have to be produced over the next 40 years is going to be more than has had to be produced in the last 10,000. I don't know about you, but that really had my head spinning about the fact that we're going to have some new solutions. Food is also at this real nexus of many of the big issues that we face. So take climate change, for example. 25% of carbon dioxide emissions are as a result of agriculture. So agriculture plays an incredibly important role in emissions, and equally, that's one of the areas that clearly we have to reduce the impact of. But at the same time, as a result of climate change, we face more challenges than ever as far as the security of the food system is concerned. The resilience of it, its ability to withstand droughts, or to be able to withstand periods of flooding, for example. And we see these shocks coming through the food system. We also have this double burden that gets talked about a lot. It's still shocking in the world that despite the amount of progress that's been made in raising people out of poverty, we still have at least 800 million people who are going to bed hungry every night. We've also got 2 billion people who lack the micronutrients that they need to be healthy. And yet we've got almost exactly the same number of people who have got issues around overweight or obesity. And so when we talk about the system being broken, partly it's about climate change, but at the same time, it's also about health. And when we're talking about obesity, it raises all the other issues that are attendant to that, such as diabetes too. And we see this right across the world as one of the key issues that we are going to be facing. And then, very importantly, and again, another real paradox, that despite the fact that we have people who are going to bed hungry at night, we still have an incredible amount of food waste. Up to 40% of all the food that is produced in the world is going to waste. We like to talk about the fact that if food waste was a country, it would in fact be the third biggest emitter after the US and China. Again, really quite a staggering number. And we see these losses in food waste all the way through the system. In some parts of the world, it's about food that goes to rot in the fields because it's not being harvested, or because there's insufficient irrigation to be able to help it come to full harvest. We see losses in the food storage system in many emerging markets. And then particularly in the richer, more developed economies, it's consumer waste. It's the amount of food that we throw away out of our refrigerators every week, or the amount of food, for example, in restaurants, that gets sent back and that goes to waste. So we have this system that whichever way you look at it is broken. And we know that collectively we're going to have to find some fixes for this. There are plenty of headlines that touch on all the things that we've talked about. One of the reasons why I am optimistic about our ability to transform the food system is that I would argue that food has never mattered to people as much as it does today. I'm optimistic about the fact that when we look at millennials in particular, we find a group of consumers who are incredibly involved in food, who want to understand where it's come from, who's made it, the kind of social conditions, the quality of the food that they're eating, the health of food. But at the same time, we also see a mass of confusion in terms of the kind of dietary advice that consumers are being given. Food really, therefore, is at the center of this exponential change that is happening. You can see it in terms of transparency becoming the norm. You can see it in terms of the ecosystem for food changing. You can see it in terms of the evolving nutrition debate. So the question is, what is it that we need to do? And I believe that we need to have a systemic approach and a collective approach to really fixing this broken system. I can tell you what it is that we're doing as Unilever. And that is that we have a manifesto around sustainable nutrition. One of the things which we are most proud about in Unilever is the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, which we started in 2010. It was built on the foundation that we had of one of our founders, Lord Leverhulme, who back in Victorian Britain talked about making cleanliness commonplace. And in 2010, we made a similar but different commitment, and that is a commitment to sustainable living. And so I think it's quite natural then that if that's what we're trying to do as a total business, when it comes to food, we're the sustainable nutrition part of that equation. And actually, sustainable nutrition really does touch on all of the sustainable development goals. But there are 5 areas that really matter to us the most in this. The first is about food that's good for people and planet. This isn't an either-or, it's both. And we've really got to find food that's good for the planet as well as for human health. The second is that we recognize our responsibility as a food company to ensure that the products that we put onto the market are not only safe, but that they help to improve people's health and well-being, and that we provide consumers with the information that they need to be able to make healthier choices for themselves and for their families. The third area that we have a commitment towards is in the area of food fortification, because we recognize that there are still many parts of the world, Africa, for example, or Southeast Asia, where we've got half of children that are growing up with issues around stunting as a result of micronutrient deficiencies. And so when we have products that get used on a daily basis, so products like bouillon cubes or margarines, we've got the ability to be able to fortify those so that consumers are able to get those micronutrients which are critical to healthier lives. We also play a very important role in nutritious cooking, in helping consumers be able to make more healthful meals, in helping consumers to know how to cook at a time when actually cooking skills and that passing down of recipes and know-how from generation to generation is diminishing. So we play this role in helping consumers be able to put nutritious, affordable, convenient meals together. And then just as I talked about food waste and how it's impossible to have this conversation about the broken food system without tackling the topic of food waste, we recognize that we also have a role to play in reducing waste all the way through the system. And when we say all the way through the system, one of the hallmarks of the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan is that we're not only talking about the production of products that's within our direct control, but we're also talking about before ingredients get into our factories, but also all the way through to consumers and how they use and how they dispose of packaging, etc. So it's an end-to-end commitment that we're making around waste. So let me just talk a little bit about how that comes to life, because it is really through our brands that we're able to deliver on these commitments. We're very proud of what we've been able to do around food that's good for people and the planet. As part of the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, we have a very big commitment to ensuring that the most important commodities that we use are from sustainable sources. And actually, I'm particularly proud of the fact that in Argentina, as a result of the landmark farm initiative that we have, that when you take the 13 most important fruits and vegetables that we're using, they are 100% sourced sustainably. And so what does that mean? It means that we're helping to improve soil health. It means that as a result of irrigation techniques, we're able to reduce the amount of water by 30%, and we're able to increase yields by 30% as well. So that's an example from Argentina, but there are many others that I could share from throughout the world that we're able to do it. We're also helping consumers to transition from those parts of the world where diets are predominantly meat and dairy-based to be more plant-based. And one of the examples you can see up here is of a spread that we've introduced into the UK through our Flora brand. We talk about that's a brand that's powered by plants, but where we have dairy alternatives for consumers. Second area around health and well-being, I'll talk about a little bit more shortly. But we have, again, within the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, a commitment to reduce the amount of salt in our products, to reduce the amount of saturated fat, to eliminate trans fats, and to ensure that 60% of our portfolio by 2020 is at the highest nutritional standards. And those highest nutritional standards aren't just coming from us. We don't make up the numbers. We use the World Health Organization's guidelines as being the framework by which we're able to set the targets for our products. Food fortification, a very important area, as I touched on before, something that is very much in the DNA of our spreads business, where we fortified with vitamins A and D, but we're doing this throughout the portfolio, the most recent addition, in fact, being to bouillon cubes in Africa that we're able to fortify with iron in countries where the majority of girls are, in fact, iron deficient, which also gets in the way of their schooling. And then a very big focus on nutritious cooking, not just with consumers, but part of our business is also directed towards food service operators. And we've got an important role to play there in helping operators to create more healthful meals, but also as far as education on food safety is concerned too. And then on food waste, this end-to-end commitment that I'm going to be sharing some examples of very soon. Now, I know that there is a debate that is really raging around processed foods. And I thought it'd be worth spending a few moments just to talk about the very important role that we see packaged foods playing. So we believe that we need to have more healthful offerings for consumers, and that isn't a debate about whether products have been processed or not. In fact, there are many techniques in processing that have been used for centuries when we look at popular ways of preserving products, pickling, for example, or bottling. But we really very much believe that as a result of the kind of products that we make, we're able to help give consumers democratic access to good food. We're able to ensure that food is safe, first and foremost. We're able to help educate consumers to be able to create nutritious meals. We're able to help consumers, and when I say consumers, in this case, I will say it for the women who are in the room, it is predominantly women to whom the burden of putting food on the table every day for families is left, but it helps them to be able to make convenient, nutritious food. So we have a very important role to play, and I hope that just some of the examples I've given you today help you understand how seriously we take our commitment to ensure that that food is more healthful and nutritious. We've been recognized as a company as being a leader in this field. When we look at the Access to Nutrition Index, we were #1 and really recognized for those nutrition standards that we set based on the World Health Organization guidelines, for the work that we've done on reformulation and on labeling, and the fact that we've got responsible marketing policies that extend to the approach that we take to advertising to children, in fact, not advertising to children. So let me now showcase a little bit more how our brands are really putting this into action, and how through our brands we can nudge, if you like, consumers into action. The first I want to start with is about how do we help consumers have more nutritious offerings. You can see up here for yourselves the commitments that we've made around the highest nutrition standards to reducing salt, reducing SAFA, and the removal of trans fat. I think one example that I'd just like to call out here is the Knorr Balance product, where we've been able to create a fantastic tasting bouillon that's able to deliver 25% less sodium. So again, as I said before, this is a case of small actions, but big impact, given the frequency of usage, and when you put this into the context of total diet. We've also really been able to help consumers with nutritious cooking, helping them to have recipes that are nutritious, helping them to have access to information, and also making sure that we've got labeling, which is front of pack, as well as clear and understandable for them to be able to use. And then turning to food waste, and I happen to love this example. The Argentina team have really taken this issue of food waste, got hold of it, and are running with it. And I think as all of these initiatives have done it in partnership. So Salvemos la Comida is a partnership with Unilever, Carrefour, the Ministry of Agriculture, and FAO. And as a result of it, they've been able to bring awareness to this issue of food waste, helping consumers to be able to make very simple changes to reduce the impact that they have, and also living it in our own business. And I had the privilege of being in Buenos Aires yesterday and being with the team, and I'll say just as an aside that this is something that's really alive and well in our business as well. And I would invite all of you who are here today to participate in your own ways in looking at how are you able to reduce the food waste in the places that you live by raising this consciousness about how we're eating. So a really important partnership that we're very proud to have initiated and to be part of, and that we look for partners in. I want to now show two videos that I think probably better than words are able to demonstrate how we bring sustainable nutrition to life. One is from Knorr, and the other is from Hellmann's. So it's a little bit of a commercial break, but let's just take a look.
The sun was big and low to the ground. The cold, it froze my fingers tight. Time was still and I was lost from sight for a while. The call is new to turn me loose. You had my heart, I knew it from the start. You had my heart forever. Feel love, feel love, feel love, feel love.
New Hellmann's red and green ketchup. We're committed to making sure no good tomato goes to waste. And we're committed to great fresh taste. Because at Hellmann's, we're on the side of food.
So just two examples that I hope really bring to life how we are living through our brands. Food that tastes good, does good, and doesn't cost the earth. That's the vision that we have for our foods business. We believe that sustainable nutrition and brands that have got purpose is absolutely central to our business. And it's been a real privilege to be able to share that with you all today. Thank you.